Looky here, it's another 50mm f1.4. Today, we're looking at the Sony FE 50mm f1.4 G Master, the newest addition to Sony's lineup of full-frame lenses. At the end of the day, a 50mm is a 50mm. However, this one performs at the top level in pretty much every way. From the outer design, crazy fast autofocus motors, and improved lens coatings to the reduced size and weight, there are plenty of reasons to get excited about this lens. To start off, let's talk about the physical design. G Master primes have always had some nice features, and the 50mm f1.4 is no exception. Like other G Master lenses, it's made of the same high quality plastic on the outside of the lens with a rubber gasket around the back to prevent dust and moisture entering. The lens isn't totally weather sealed, but it is dust and moisture resistant. So let's get into the buttons and dials. To start off, the focus ring is unique in that it responds to being turned linearly. This is great for doing repeatable focus racks in video, and it feels similar to using a mechanical focus system. It's interesting to note that when using autofocus, this lens can focus at 0.41 meters, but can focus closer at 0.38 meters when using manual focus. Next up, this is always nice to have. It's an aperture ring on the actual lens itself. This can free up a dial or button on the camera, and it's great because it's also declickable. So this is going to make it great for doing video because you can do iris racks. The 50mm f1.4 has the same front element thread of 67mm, so you can share your lens attachments with the 24mm f1.4 and the 35mm f1.4. And like most G Master lenses, it also has two customizable focus hold buttons and of course an MF/AF switch. As we've all been told at some point during our lives, it's not what's on the outside that counts, it's what's on the inside. And in this case, it's absolutely true. The 50mm features Sony's newest lens coatings, elements, and focus motors. So let's talk about the focus motor first. The 50mm f1.4 G Master features Sony's XD-LM, or Extreme Dynamic Linear Motor. This linear motor design is intended to give you fast, silent autofocus. As you can see, it's impressively fast and accurate. Next up, we might as well talk about the type of lens elements the 50mm uses before we get into what they're coated with. As you most likely know, a lens is made up of several smaller groups of glass elements that direct light to the camera sensor. They're all special in their own little ways, but I want to focus on two types: the extreme aspherical lens and the ED glass. The XA lens is a more refined version of an aspherical lens. Aspherical lenses bend light better than normal spherical lens elements, and as a result, the light is more accurately focused, and it reduces image distortion. Aspherical lens designs are also smaller and require less parts to produce. Now, the difference between a regular aspherical lens and an XA lens is the finish quality. If we look at this comparison, you can see that Sony have found a way to basically polish this element to a near perfect finish. ED glass's main job is to suppress color aberration, and depending on how ED glass is shaped, it can help deal with several additional types of aberrations, such as spherical aberration and coma. In addition to the shape, materials, and processes used to create the individual elements inside the lens, they will all get some kind of coating to aid in either keeping external debris off the front lens element or to improve how light passes through the lens. The 50mm f1.4 G Master uses two different coatings for at least two types of its elements. First being Nano AR Coating 2, and for the front element, Fluorine. I'm sure there are other coatings used, but I'm not aware of them at this time. Nano Anti-Reflective Coating 2 helps to reduce internal reflections that cause flare and ghosting, while the coating of Fluorine to the front element helps to keep debris like dirt, water, and oil off. As a result, the coating also makes it much easier to clean the front element. I can attest to the ability of the front coating. There were a bunch of times while I was testing this lens where snow was blowing right into the front element of the lens while shooting, and it sort of just brushed off without leaving any smudges. The only downside of this lens that I can really see is that it doesn't have optical steady shot, so you'll have to rely on your camera's in-body stabilization. Since this lens is a 50mm, it finds itself pretty much in the middle of the standard focal range. To me, this makes it a good all-round lens, being useful for many applications. I used it in a few different ways during my testing. I used it for some travel and street photography, studio portraits, and some close-up plant photography. Here's the thing, it's fun to go around with only one lens or focal length, but after a while, it does start to feel limiting. So if I was just getting into buying lenses and could only get one, I'd most likely go for a zoom, like a 24 to 70mm or a 24 to 105mm. But if you can afford to get a set of primes from the get-go, or are in the market for a second lens, then by all means, this is going to be a no-brainer of a choice. I enjoyed using this lens the most during a portrait session I did with my friend Prudence. It was a blast using this lens, and I think I was able to get a good variety of shots. All these photos were shot with the A7R III, and they were all shot at f1.4 in RAW. And this was my first time shooting portraits in studio, so it was a fun challenge. I think in this case, that having only one focal length allowed me to focus in on my lighting and Prudence's poses instead of zooming in and out constantly because I can, you know. It's one focal length, so you kind of just hone in. And I think that for sure is one of the best reasons to use a prime lens. It makes you more intentional with your framing, and it's been said before, but some of the best ways to inspire your creativity is to work with less or to work with some form of constraint. Now, some of you may be watching thinking, Sony makes a 50mm f1.2 G Master. Well, you'd be absolutely right, and it's been a workhorse for many people for the last few years. However, the f1.2 is noticeably larger and quite a bit more expensive, coming at $2,599.99 and 778 grams for the f1.2 and $1,799.99 or 516 grams for the f1.4. Now that's a lot of savings in both weight and money, and to be honest, I've never been like, oh, I need f1.2. f1.4 has generally been more than good enough, and to be honest, usually f2.8 is more than good enough for the work that I do. Here are some comparison shots of the f1.4 to the f1.2. You can see right off the bat that the f1.2 is ever so slightly sharper than the f1.4, but they are pretty much the same. The difference is very minimal to the point where honestly, it's barely noticeable, especially if you're not zoomed in to the pixel level. I did notice one strange thing, though. The camera settings were exactly the same for each set of photos, so it's strange that the f1.2 has a slightly warmer tone to it than the photos shot with the f1.4. Personally, I don't see myself going for the 1.2. For most applications, I don't need to shoot that wide open. The f1.2 might look sharper overall, but the weight, size, and cost difference are more than enough for me to choose the 1.4 over the 1.2. In any case, it'd be hard to be disappointed with this lens. It's pretty much everything you would want and expect for video and photo when it comes to 50mm primes. So here's the question, would I buy this lens? It's made well, and it performs. However, there are other 50mm f1.4 options that have been recently released that have pretty much the exact same build quality and features as the Sony. So for several $100s less, it's a bit more difficult of a decision, but I would say it's a matter of taste, what your needs are, and potentially what brand you're already invested in. If you want to see more specs of the 50mm f1.4 G Master or to learn more about Sony's lenses and other camera tech, check the links in the description. Well, there you go. That is my breakdown of the Sony FE 50mm f1.4 G Master. I don't really want to give this lens back to Sony, to be honest, but I guess I'll have to at some point. Anyways, see you next time. Bye.